So we're going shopping again. I don't know if you remember that if maybe you weren't part of the group at that time, but we went shopping at the grocery store. I think, gosh, I don't know if it was May. It's been a while. And to me, it makes sense to do this because the one thing that most people that meet with me ask is, what can I eat? That's usually their very first question. And then after we start talking about what they should eat, we look at the My Plate, and this is always my go-to. It's the American Association of Diabetic Educators support, the ADA supports it, and it's a good way for any of us to be evaluating our plates and see, are we getting enough vegetables? Are we getting some fruit? Are we eating healthy proteins? And are we limiting that starch on our plate? And this plate's based on a 9-inch plate, so maybe our plates are too large. So there's a lot of things we can do, and we start trying to eat healthier. And when you have a diagnosis of diabetes, that's one of the things that can actually help blood sugar, is paying attention to what you're eating, seeing if we can reduce some of those carbohydrates and just make healthier choices overall. So usually we start with the My Plate. Then we go to, I usually grab some kind of a sheet. I have a sheet that's all about the glycemic index of foods. So there are healthier choices, even in all the different food groups. So for instance, in fruit, an apple would be a better choice over watermelon. And I always point that out, especially in July and August when watermelon is so good and everybody's telling me they're eating all this watermelon and they think they're doing great because it's a fruit. Keep in mind that the effect that a food has on your body sometimes, and the effect that it has on your blood sugar, sometimes is based on the fiber that's in that food. So it's not that you can't have fruit when you have diabetes. It's that you need to pay attention to which fruits you're choosing. Maybe there are healthier or better choices when it comes to every single food group. There's a better choice, whether it's a pasta, a vegetable, or a fruit. So what I usually do with my education then is I go into, let's talk about those better choices. And if when you go to the store, can you start focusing more on those that have more fiber and that are in that column of very low or low glycemic index. That's what that GI stands for, glycemic index. And all that means is what effect and how large of an effect does this food that you're choosing to eat have on your blood sugar? And you think, well, what does it matter? Well, if blood sugar spikes up to 400 when you have diabetes, it takes longer for it to come back down to the goal of 80 to 140, if that's the goal that your doctor has suggested. If blood sugar only spikes up to 150, then it doesn't take quite as long for it to get down below that 140. So it could take 4 hours or more. It can even be affecting that next meal, some of the foods that you ate, at the first meal. So really it does have an overall effect on how blood sugar is controlled. Our goal is that you would be 80 to 140 all the time. That's probably not going to happen. So then our next goal would be that when you do choose a food, you choose a low or very low or even a medium food that has the glycemic effect on your blood sugar, so that your blood sugar is able to come back down faster and get into that 80 to 140 range, which is what our goal. When we were all young, we ate a Snickers bar, blood sugar spiked up and came back down. Maybe in an hour or two, it's back down in the 80, 140. But especially with type 2, type 1, of course, would be different, but type 2, blood sugar is just not being used well by the body, so it stays up longer. And that's when it can have its negative effect on blood vessels. So, this whole year, 2022, this has been kind of our theme. And I know I forced this theme on you guys as you come to the presentations, but, if we're going to talk about diabetes and self-management of diabetes, it's time to get serious on this. I mean, we could, I've been doing the diabetic group since 2015. So then I think, have we really made any progress? It's time, if we're going to, we've got to get serious. And we really got to start looking at things more seriously, taking it on, ownership of diabetes, and working, even if you don't want to think about having to manage diabetes, think about this, think about doing what's best for your body, because whether you have diabetes or not, it's a good idea to eat healthy. So most of the time though, when I meet with patients and we talk about food and what can they eat, their comments usually are, it's too expensive to eat healthy. The cost of produce and meat is expensive. The cost of those special ingredients, it's too much trouble. It's time consuming and they're just really busy. And it's too difficult. Sometimes they're cooking just for themselves and they don't want to make a big meal, or maybe there's just too many ingredients in a recipe. So as I thought of these three things, I thought, that seems a little strange because I'm able to find recipes and make meals that are not too overly expensive if you add up all the leftovers that we have. Not that much trouble, a little bit time consuming up front, but then saves time maybe later when I have all those leftovers, and not too difficult. If we, again, one of these recipes we're talking about today does have a lot of different vegetables in it, but most of them have very few ingredients, making it, to me, simpler. So what I'm putting forth in this presentation and what I did, this is the same slide I used in the other presentation when we went grocery shopping, is eating healthy can be affordable. We gotta work on that. Preparing your own meals does take some time, but eating healthy doesn't have to be difficult. The affordable thing, I'm going to start really questioning because things have really gone up in price. Some of the things that I normally purchase for these recipes have doubled. And so I will agree that affordability is getting harder to come by. And so I'm really looking for those sales, looking at the sale ads more than I used to. Of course, I go to Save a Lot, and I'm not going to put forth any specific store or any specific name brand. I just use whatever's the cheapest usually when it comes to a canned good, or if I'm at that store, and quality. There's certain things I will only use a certain name brand because I think the quality is better, and I'm sure you all do that also. But so through this, you may see a name brand, and I'll say certain stores, and I'm not, of course, getting any kickbacks from them, but you can choose whatever store works for you and whatever name brand of food works for you. But affordability is becoming more difficult. It's not quite as what my definition of affordability used to be. So I'm having to kind of change that a little bit, but I did my best when we were doing this. Some of the things were on sale, and I hate to go back now and look at the prices because I'm afraid they might have even gone up since 2 weeks ago when I purchased this stuff. But it is that time of the year when, I don't know about you guys, with the cooler days and even cooler nights, my mind naturally starts drifting towards warm food, a hot bowl of soup, and also pumpkin. Anything pumpkin starts sounding good. I don't know why in the middle of August or even July or even the spring, pumpkin does not come to my mind. But as soon as the fall starts hitting and it starts getting cold, I start thinking of pumpkin flavored things, and they sound like they would be good. So the recipes that we're going to look at today, I tried to find them and share the ones that I thought were easier, that were cheapest. They had lower carbs. They would offer you leftovers, so it maybe save time later on. And they just really hit the spot for all those fall and cold weather cravings. Now, this is one that probably is not a surprise to any of you, and maybe you make it all the time, and so this was a waste of my time, but some of the things that I did do might be a little different. And I think, Haley, do you have the video ready to go for that one, or?
I do not. I'm not able to share my screen.
Okay.
Yep. But I can share it in the chat.
Okay.
If anybody would like to pull it up and look at it, I can share it there.
Okay. All right. So Haley worked hard to put together some videos, and I couldn't get mine. They were still downloading and taking too long to get downloaded to be able to add them in. And she just put together some of the pictures and things kind of as put together the recipe. So it is a resource for you to go back to, or these slides will be a little bit, but seeing it in the video might help show you how it all comes together. But literally and these are fresh green beans, potatoes, and turkey sausage. It's so simple. There's very few ingredients. I use the turkey sausage because it's healthier than other as far as the fat content. So like I've said before, when we were doing the Let's Go Shopping, the first one, we're talking about carbohydrates here. I'm not talking specifically about fats, although this one's going to hit the healthier or maybe a better fat. And I'm not talking about, organic or anything like that, or like this meat would be considered maybe not as healthy or good as like some actual fresh, range fed, whatever type of meat. We're not talking about that. I'm trying to find the most affordable, low carb recipes that taste good. So we can only cover so many things when it comes to making a recipe. Like I've said before, if you want low calorie, low carb, low fat, go on and on and on. The only thing you'll be eating is ice. So, if you want some flavor in your life and some different recipes, sometimes you have to, if you can, if your body will allow you to and doesn't have a reaction to some of these foods, you're going to have to let go a little bit and have some things that aren't 100% healthy for you. With that said, a lot of times you're going to see in my recipes, I use turkey because my husband is allergic to beef and pork. So we use a lot of turkey and chicken. All right, so let's get started and look at this. Even if you've made it before, we'll kind of review, and at least you'll get an idea of what the carbohydrates and the cost was for at least this for this recipe. So on the nutrition labels, looking at them, about a serving size of this turkey sausage is about 10 to 14 bite-sized pieces, and the carbohydrates are about 5 grams. And I pointed out the fats because, we talked about healthy fats before in another presentation. And so really this isn't bad. It does have some saturated fat. One of the fats we want to kind of avoid or stay away from, but limit is really what it said. And so this is this is low. So not too bad when it comes to the nutrition label for that. The nutrition label, I went ahead and pulled that up for the non-starchy vegetables. Onions are a non-starchy vegetable. They have about 10 carbs, but there is some fiber. And later on, when I get to the slide where I'm actually adding up all the carbohydrates, we will subtract out that fiber. Green beans have about 7 carbs, but also they have 2.7 grams of fiber. And from this recipe, I was easily able to get about 10 servings, and I'll put that in also at the final carbohydrate count. So, the starchy potato, the starchy vegetable, the potato is where most of our carbs are going to come from. But in my case, I used just 2 medium potatoes. You could use less, you could use a little bit more. But what I did was I cut them up very small so that, if I wanted some potato, there was a little bit in each bite. So I didn't feel like I was being deprived, but I thought later, you could do the opposite. You could actually cut them larger and you could actually scoop out the green beans and the turkey sausage and stay away from the potatoes maybe more. So that's up to you, however you want to do that. But if I cut them up small, I get some potato in there, so I don't feel like I'm being deprived, and I can enjoy that and still limit the amount. So I put approximately 2 medium potatoes in this recipe. But again, if you like more, you can add a few more, or even if you don't care for them that much at all, I would suggest adding less. The hardest part of this recipe to me was cleaning the green beans, cutting off the ends and then cutting them into bite-sized pieces. So that was the most difficult part, really. And that's really not too hard. I put a movie on while I was doing that and was able to watch a movie while I put it all together. To me, make it simple, put it in a crock pot. And then what I did, instead, so you don't have to stir it up, I just started layering. I put green beans and onions. I put the potatoes, then I put the turkey sausage and a few more green beans and onions. I just kind of layered it so you wouldn't have to, stir it up once it was all in the crock pot. And you could add chicken broth or vegetable broth. I think this time, I'm pretty sure I just added some water to about half filled, just to make sure that there was enough water, because I was going to leave the crock pot cooking on its own, and I didn't want it to go dry without anything in it at all, which has happened to me before when I've used a crock pot. But I have used chicken stock before, or even vegetable broth will work if you want a little bit more flavoring with it. Literally in the crock pot, 6 to 8 hours, depending on the temperature you put it on. Probably, if you're on a medium, 6 would be fine. Low, or I guess high, maybe medium to high, 6 hours, and then 8 hours, you put that on low. Or cook it on the stove top for about an hour, bring it to a boil, allow it to boil. The main thing is let the vegetables, get tender, and you can check that by sticking a fork in them or whatever, but it's very simple. So if we compare this recipe to the My Plate, because again, that's our goal, is to eat balanced meals, try and get your non-starchy vegetables, your lean protein, and a little bit of starch. I think that this recipe checks off all areas. I know dairy and fruit is a whole nother thing, but just for your overall basic meal, you had your non-starchy vegetables. It's full of green beans. You had your starch. You limited your potatoes, so they would probably, as you eyeball that bowl, fit within that little section of the plate. And then your lean protein is your turkey sausage. So I think it conforms perfectly to the my plate, which, like I said before, is what the American Diabetic Association suggests that you try to follow for a balanced meal. I think the thing that's most important to me, besides the low carbs, is there were leftovers. And I'm sorry, I had to actually, these are stock photos. I had to pick up some photos. I'm like, I didn't even take pictures of our leftovers because we ate it so fast. But I'm guessing we easily got 8 up to 10 meals. And the reason I'm guessing is that sometimes my husband ate 2 servings and not just 1. So I'm thinking what was left, how much did come out of that bowl? I was able to freeze some. So that's again, another at least 4 servings, if not a little bit more. And that to me is a benefit. When someone says they don't have time, yeah, it took a little time putting this together. Cleaning those green beans, that was the most difficult part and the most time consuming. But once it's done, then you have those meals ready and prepared, those healthier meals ready and prepared. So I'm less likely to go out and get something to eat or throw something, something not quite as healthy, into the oven or cook it at home. This is already ready. It just has to be thawed for leftovers. So that was a big benefit to me. So the overall cost of the green bean sausage, turkey sausage, and potatoes, because again, that's another thing. Everyone says, oh, it's too expensive to eat low carb or to eat healthy. So the I got 2 pounds, but you can make a smaller portion if you want. But the pound of fresh green beans, that was like $1.89 per pound at that time. Again, that was on sale. So give or take, it might be a little different, but I got 2 pounds. So I multiplied that by 2 packages of the turkey sausage. My husband always likes to make sure there's more protein in it. So I just put 2. You wouldn't have to. Again, that's make it to how you like. This is one of the things that's doubled in price because I used to be able to get a package for $2.50 a lot of times on sale. So it was $4.29 and I got 2 of those. The potatoes came from our garden, so this was kind of hard, but I just kind of estimated what a bag of potatoes is going for and what 2 medium potatoes would probably be around 50 cents each when you actually get a bag of potatoes and do the division. And then the onion was $1.59 for the onion. So total, the whole thing that would be around $14.95, but because we got 8 meals out of it, it came to around $1.87 per meal. And I'm sorry, when someone tells me it's too expensive, but yet they say they go out and eat, you cannot tell me that you can get a meal, even at McDonald's anymore, for $1.87. It's just not possible. And like I said before, I've sat in a drive-through waiting for my meal, and you drive away with a bag of food and you get, 2 blocks away and it's not even what you ordered, or it's just not as good as what you remember it being in the past. And so I think that when we talk about the cost, things have gone up, but so has eating out. Prices have gone up there also. I don't think you can beat the $1.87 again, because this checks off everything we need when it comes to that healthy my plate portion sizes. So let's look at the carbs. Again, this is kind of an estimate. Some of these things I'm working with, trying to figure out, well, if there were this many servings and so on. And I think on this one with the different vegetables, I may have thought about 10 servings, because I'm pretty sure we actually got more than 8 servings out of it. I was being kind of conservative on the servings. But for the turkey sausage, again, 10 to 14 pieces was 5 grams. And usually you're not going to have but probably less than 10 to 14 in one serving. The green beans, for a cup of green beans, it's 7 grams, but you can subtract the fiber. So that gives you 4.3 grams. The onion is approximately 10 grams for a medium onion, but you can, there was some carbs or fiber you could subtract on that one. I think I didn't on that one because I just put 1, thinking we had about 8 to 10 servings. 2 medium potatoes, total would be 74 grams of carbohydrates. And on that one, I thought, give or take maybe 6 servings. Again, I'm always trying to be conservative so that you maybe get a little less than what I'm actually saying. But totally, if you put it all together, about a cup of this is going to equal out to about 19 grams, give or take, of carbohydrates. And that might sound like a lot to you all at once, but actually the American Diabetic Association and almost everything we use for education says you should be eating about 45 grams of carbs. Sometimes it says 45 to 60. Our clinics, most of the time, if you're trying to lose weight, none of our doctors I haven't talked to any doctor who's going to approve less than 30 per meal. So you would have 90 for the whole day plus maybe a snack. But, if you're talking 30, you're still well below that if you round that up to 20. So not a bad choice. And again, like I said, for the cost and for meeting all of those criteria for the My Plate, I think the green beans, potato, turkey sausage, not a bad choice if that's something that you like. If not, this one is, and at first I didn't think I would like this recipe when I found it in a book, and I call it, it was called a vegetarian minestrone soup, but I call it the not so vegetarian minestrone soup. And I think you'll see why here in a second. You can see back there in the picture, there's actually a picture of ground turkey because, again, my husband's all about adding some more protein. And so I added ground turkey to this, and it's good either way, whether you want it to be vegetarian and avoid any kind of meat, or if you want to add a little bit more protein and add some meat. The ground turkey only enhances it, makes it a better soup. So again, you cook the turkey till well done, and this I did in a kind of a stew pot so that I could cook the turkey with a little bit of onion and olive oil, and then I could just put all the vegetables in the pot. I didn't have to have 2 or 3 different pots that were going on because the turkey doesn't have any fat when you cook it. That's why I had to add a little olive oil, and that's why you can put it into the same pot you're going to put everything else, because there's just no fat when you cook the ground turkey. There are a lot of non-starchy vegetables in this soup. There's carrots, the zucchini, and then there's onions, and literally you can individualize this. So if you really like a lot more carrots and you don't like onions, then put more carrots and very few onions. Any of the vegetables that you want more of, add some more and take away some others that you don't care for. Fresh or frozen spinach is an option. I use the frozen because once it's frozen, I just take the package out and literally just crunch it up. And so then it's all broken up. I don't have to cut anything, but you could use fresh. Sometimes I've taken fresh spinach and I've frozen it in baggies, and again, take it out and crunch it up, and it actually all falls apart so that it's in bite-sized pieces and you don't have to cut it. But either one, fresh works. I've done that when I've had it. To this time, I just used frozen and it was just fine. We like a lot more spinach, and it's a healthy choice. So one of those superfoods. So I went ahead and helped put the whole bag of spinach in. So again, that's up to you. Again, you can add more of what you like, a little bit less of what maybe isn't your favorite, and it's going to end up tasting good. This has, because it is minestrone, it has a little bit of an Italian flavor to it that comes from the tomatoes that are added that have the Italian flavoring. Plus you add Italian seasonings. But there's the zucchini, there are the onions going in, and then I use vegetable broth, and that's what it calls for. I've used chicken broth before, and it's just not as good. There's something with that vegetable broth that just really adds more to it. So again, celery, carrots, everything added in. There's at the end, there is the Italian spices. I cut all the vegetables to be kind of small and bite-sized pieces so that it takes a little bit more time, but to me it's easier to eat, and I prefer that instead of having big pieces of vegetable. But again, that's up to your individual taste. Then this is what I'm talking about when it's the Italian flavored canned tomatoes, or if it says basil, garlic, or oregano on it. Sometimes I can't find the ones that say Italian flavored or whatever, so I just get these that actually have the Italian spices of basil, garlic, and oregano. And I do put 2 cans. I think the original recipe called for 1, but I like more of that tomatoey. I like tomatoes. I like the tomato flavor in it. So a few more than what it's actually called for. And it does call for cannellini beans, I think is how it's pronounced. I think I've been pronouncing it wrong all along, and this might be incorrect also, the way I just said it, but it's a white bean, and it is a starch. So when we think about the My Plate, we're going to evaluate it here in a little bit, it is going to count in that starch, but there's so much fiber and protein also in beans. And so what you're supposed to do is I drain the can and I rinse the beans just to get more of that starch that's in that can. You know, if you open a can of beans and you can see all of that, I don't even know what you would say, but it's just kind of a cloudy look to the fluid that's in there. That's kind of the starch of the bean that's come out. Rinse all that off real well under the tap water, and then allow those beans to dry, or to not dry, but just kind of like drain real well. So once all the vegetables and the turkey is added, allow it to cook for about an hour on medium high. I bring it to a boil and then I let it just simmer. So I turn the heat down and let it simmer for about an hour. You're going to see, I think this next picture shows, you can tell a difference. And, you know, this is more fresh. You can see all the vegetables are floating over the top. And then it seems like as we get here, it's getting mixed well. The color becomes a richer color. And to me, that's an indication that's starting to get done. But always, you know, again, I use a fork sometimes just to see if all the vegetables, especially the carrots, sometimes seem to take a little longer. If they're tender, then you know that it's ready. I mean, everything is cooked, so really it's just heating, or the meat is cooked. So you're really just heating it through, and then, like I said, trying to get those vegetables as tender as you like them. You might like them a little bit more crunchy than what we do. But as it cools down, it gets a richer color, and you'll be able to tell from that it's getting close to being done. So about an hour cooks time. So if you actually take a bowl, this is actually the pot, so not this much, but excuse me, if you took a bowl of the soup and you compared it to the My Plate, again, you're going to have to eyeball it. You're not going to be able to take every little bit out and actually put it on the plate to get a good, perfect idea. You're just you're guessing a little bit, but you got your lean protein. If you added the turkey, you got your lean protein, check. You got some protein from the beans and other vegetables. So you're going to get some, but you're going to get even more if you add something like turkey or chicken to it. You got a whole load of non-starchy vegetables, all kinds of them in there. So you're definitely going to check that section off. And then, of course, the starch is checked off with your beans. And it's just one can of beans rinsed. And so, you know, you're not going to be overdoing, unless you keep adding, you add 2 cans, then, you know, that starch area might get filled up a little bit more, but it's just 1 can. So when you have a bowl of it, you're probably not even getting, you know, a fourth of what that starch area on that My Plate would be. So again, I think that this recipe hits every one of the requirements for the My Plate and a balanced meal. And I believe on this one, I'll have to wait till I get there. I'm thinking I had about 10 servings of this one. Actually, we had 12. We were able to get 12 servings from this. So again, going through carbs and cost, because that's kind of 2 of the things that I'm looking at, is how many carbohydrates are we talking for each serving, and what's the cost going to end up being. And you can see here, I took the grams that were on the back of the nutrition label, or if it was a carrot or celery or onions, spinach, some of those I took, I went online to find what those would be, and then subtracted the fiber that was each one. So that's why you'll see 6 grams minus 2 grams equals 4 grams. You know, in the carrots, a half a cup, 6 grams minus 1.5 grams equals 4.5, and so on. And so if you get all the way down to the bottom, it looks like approximately you would have around possibly 33 grams. I think that's for a cup of soup. I'm sorry, 33 grams total, approximately 3 carbs per serving, because if we divide it by how many servings we had. Again, that's all approximate. And the cost of the overall meal, again, approximate. If it totals up to about 15, 16 with 12 servings or 12 different meals, then we're talking about $1.30 per meal. And so I guess I'm really talking servings. Again, my husband usually eats 2 bowls of this. I usually eat 1, which would be a serving. So yeah, it'd be, I guess, $2.60 for him. He's an expensive date. But seriously though, if you know, when you talk about this price, or even $2.60, it's a lot cheaper than what you can get when you eat out. And so when people tell me, oh, it's too expensive to eat healthy, I'm not, even though prices have gone up, I will agree to that, especially in the last year, and maybe even more in the 6 months. It seems like the last 6 months, there's been a lot of changes, at least for us on our end. it's still not as bad because those same things that are going up in the store are going up at the restaurants also. It's not as bad. It's still cheaper to work at home or to eat at home, I think, as this is showing. So the next one is a chili recipe. And again, probably something that you all have made. Maybe you've started thinking about this type of recipe again, this time of year, because it starts getting cool. And I've heard people mentioning, oh, I'm having chili tonight. So it's not anything new, just a way of looking at maybe cost and a way of looking at carbohydrates. Again, you'll see that turkey is there instead of beef. So a little bit saving there on the fats also. I try to make everything as simple as possible. Like I'm trying to make it so that I don't have to work hard. You work home, work all day, you go home, you have to make dinner. I want it to be as simple as possible. And so I want something that's going to have leftovers or something that I can use one pan. I don't have to wash multiple pans. So again, I put a little olive oil in and I put the onions in and soften them a little bit until they're kind of clear looking. So just for a few minutes in the olive oil, and then I put the turkey in and cook it all together. It gives the turkey a little bit more of the flavoring. You could easily, once you do this, you could dump this into a crock pot. You could definitely do the chili in a crock pot, and maybe you already do. While it's in the pot on top of the turkey in the first slide, I add chili powder. This is one of the seasonings that I just don't care for any other chili powder. I like the Mexine, and it just seems like it has a good chili flavor. If you put it on there, it's going to do its job. Instead, I've bought off brands where it seems like I have to keep adding more and more chili powder, and you never do really get, that zing that comes sometimes with chili powder. So I add that into the meat and stir that up, and then you can see the tomato juice goes in next. I don't care which chili beans, but I do prefer maybe Brooks if I can get them. Again, for some reason, I think maybe it's just what I grew up with. That's what my mom always used. She used the Mexine. She likes the Brooks, I think, chili beans. So that's what I use, but anyone that you like would work. And as you can see, one is a name brand, and then one is, I use Kroger's diced tomatoes. I'm not picky. I just want it to be cheap, and I want it to be easy, and I want to have leftovers to make life a little easier, even days later. And I want it to taste good. And this is one that does taste good. You can make it, my husband prefers, chili that's thicker. I prefer it that is more like soup. So you can add some more tomato juice. You could add water to thin it out, however, and whatever you want to do to make it to your liking. But I think if we compare this to the My Plate, again, we're going to be hitting it pretty close. It's not full of vegetables like the minestrone soup was, but it's got tomatoes in it, which on the My Plate, even though, we're told that tomatoes are fruit, they actually are listed in the non-starchy vegetables. So I'm going to say check to the non-starchy vegetables. And in that case, also, you get all that tomato juice. You have your lean protein with the turkey, and the starch would then be the beans. So again, as you look at, and I added sometimes we sprinkle cheese on top. So then you go check again for some protein. I think I put 2-3 crackers there. So I do allow that for myself. Again, that's an option. That wasn't part of it. You don't have to, but water crackers, maybe about 2 carbs each. So again, I think overall, if you're looking just at the soup, it pretty well hits all portions of the diabetes My Plate. Again, not as well as the minestrone soup that we just looked over, but if you're in the mood for chili, then this is going to hit it pretty good. So looking at the carbs for this chili recipe, the ground turkey has no grams of carbs. The tomato juice had 8 grams with some fiber there. There's 2 grams of fibers. I think I didn't go to the trouble of subtracting them. I'm sorry, there's 10 grams of carbs. So I did subtract the 2 fibers and it got 8 grams of carbs. The tomatoes, same thing. I can't see it right off because everyone on the side is in front of that, but ends up after subtracting fiber, 4 grams per serving. And these are, I went ahead and went with a whole 1 cup serving for the soup. The onion, give or take, remember from the minestrone, was about 1 gram. The chili beans are 16 grams. Sorry. Again, though, divided up, you're not going to get all. That's for like if you were to eat, one whole, nothing but beans. So these are, of course, throughout the soup. You're not going to be eating that many beans in one serving. But just in general, around 29 grams total. With 10 servings, we were able to have 10 servings from this. So, approximately 3 grams of carbs per bowl, or 1 cup serving of the chili. So again, not bad at all. And it's going to hit the spot in these cold months for the soup this fall. The cost, not too bad either. The ground turkey again has gone up. What happened here? Right now, I got this one for this pound for $4.49. The tomato juice $2.59. Tomatoes in the cans were $1.25. The chili beans were around $1, and the onion again $1.59. So approximately $10.92. And again, divided by 10 servings, got us to about $1.09. So not a bad cost when it comes to affordability. One of the things that everyone seems to complain about is the cost, and they don't want to, besides time and the effort and cooking only for one, they don't want to go to the trouble. And then also the cost seems to be a problem. I'm going to have to disagree with the cost. I think that it's more affordable to eat at home still, even though things have gone up. Now, this next snack food is not going to meet all of the perfect carbohydrate, that we try to watch when it comes to blood sugar. However, it is a superfood snack. And so we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on serving size. But this is the pumpkin fix that I need every fall. This is pumpkin pudding. You may have seen this, on the internet as you've done searches for recipes, because I learned about this years ago at a place that used to be like a workout place, and they actually had nutrition part of it too. And you would go there and they would actually show you the recipes, make them right there, and have you taste them. And that's where I first ran into this recipe and have been hooked ever since. It's called other things, but what they called it was pumpkin pudding. These are the ingredients. The vanilla almond milk, that is optional. You can use regular milk, and I put that on the recipe, but I prefer the almond milk because there's only, I think after you subtract the fiber, there's only 1 carbohydrate. And so you're saving carbohydrates there, and it tastes good. I use the vanilla almond milk or almond milk in general in other things, or even coconut milk. It's just very thin, but for the most part, it doesn't change the flavor or taste any different than what milk would. So have you been using it more in other recipes? Because often it's all I have on hand. I don't have milk. So that's why I've kind of been forced to try it. So you mix this in stages. You put the milk, the 1 cup of milk, whichever milk you choose to use. If you use regular milk, it doesn't matter if it's skim or whole milk or 1% or 2% or whatever, because it all has the same amount of carbohydrates. So again, we're talking about carbs. If you're talking about fat, that's why it's called skim, 1%, 2% whole. That has to do with the fat content. So if you're going to use any milk, it doesn't matter to me in this recipe because we're talking carbohydrates. It's going to be about 12 to 15 carbs. I think I've seen mostly 12 on the nutrition label on milk of any fat content. So it doesn't matter, just regular milk, about 12 carbs, but the almond milk only has 1 carb. But you mix 1 cup of whichever milk you choose to use with the small package of the sugar-free vanilla pudding. And then in the middle picture there, once that's mixed up, you add the Splenda and the pumpkin spice. That's what that brown seasoning is. It's not cinnamon, it's pumpkin spice. The Splenda, I think the recipe calls for a whole cup, and it says Splenda, but it's really sweetener. Stevia is the one that I use this time. I don't care for Splenda. It leaves an aftertaste in my mouth. Stevia is better, but I do not use the whole cup. That is just way too much for me. But that's up to you, to your liking and to your taste. I can tell you, I used a 1/2 cup this last time, and it was plenty sweet. There was nothing that I noticed missing, except finally I didn't have that aftertaste. I think that 1 cup is just too much of the sweetener. Again, that's a personal thing, but the recipe is attached in the messages. I think Haley attached it there so you can look at it and you can tweak this to whatever works for you. So you can see once that's mixed up with the pumpkin spice and the sweetener, you add the pumpkin. And so I just do it in stages to make sure everything gets mixed well. If you put it all in together, it may not all mix real well. And that is 2 cans of pumpkin, and it's pure pumpkin. Just make sure that you don't get the pumpkin that has sugar in it, because then you're just adding carbohydrates. So that's what it kind of looks up like up close. I do, and you can see off to the corner, I do add some ground cinnamon just because like we learned about in the supplements, cinnamon, it can't hurt you unless you have way too much. And I don't think sprinkling some on something that's pumpkin flavored is going to be way too much. And so again, remember that we went over supplements. There's no definitive answer that ground cinnamon is going to bleed low blood sugar, but it can't hurt to add that to your oatmeal in the morning or your pumpkin desserts if you like cinnamon, to sprinkle that on. And then the Cool Whip is part of it. Everybody's like, oh, Cool Whip, I can't have any of that. Well, think about it. There's I think it says, it says later, I can't remember. I think there's 3 carbs maybe per 2 tablespoons. This calls for like half the carton to be used. And so that's why it's changed color. It's not as bright orange pumpkin. It's more of a lighter orange because I've added the Cool Whip at this point and then added again, I sprinkled cinnamon all over the final mixture. So here's the carbohydrates. So total carbs for the pumpkin is 10, but there are 3 grams of fiber. So really just 7, and that's for a half a cup serving of pumpkin. The almond milk has 1 gram after you subtract the dietary fiber from the total carbs of 2. So that would be 1 gram. And I shouldn't have put the S there. It should just be 1 gram, not 1 grams. And that's for a cup of the milk. And then the Cool Whip is 3 carbs for 2 tablespoons. So again, as you mix it all together, to me, it's really hard to get a definite answer as to what the exact carbs would be. So I gave a range of 9 to 11 is close. So the serving size, about a half a cup, give or take, a little bit more, a little bit less, but around a half a cup to 2/3 of a cup, you're going to have about 11 carbs in it. 11 carbs may sound like a lot to some people, but we're talking about a snack here. So they suggest, sometimes I see a 15 carb snack. Sometimes I see a 30 carb snack as an option. So 11 carbs really isn't bad. And I'll tell you, to me, 11 carbs is nothing when you can actually eat the snack and feel satisfied. Like if you eat a snack, like just eat some celery and it hardly doesn't have any carbs at all, if you're not satisfied, then you're going to be looking for something else. If you eat this, if you like pumpkin at all and you eat this, you're going to be satisfied. You're almost going to be to the point where on Thanksgiving, I don't need pumpkin pie. I'm going to choose this. So if you haven't tried this recipe before, I really strongly encourage you to. And it makes a pretty nice size bowl. I don't know that I added that up of how many servings because it's actually still in my fridge, so I haven't finished it. I'm trying to think. I would say there's got to be at least 12 to 15 servings in this mixture, in this bowl. And one of the things I put on the recipe is, think about freezing it. I haven't done it, but there's pumpkin ice cream out there and it might actually work well. I don't know. I haven't done that, but that's an option too. I've put it in the fridge once it's done and it's lasted a good 7 days. But again, I would try putting some in a container and, maybe freezing it and see if you can make some pumpkin ice cream that way. It'll last longer. So this is the cost of making the pumpkin pudding, the 2 cans of pumpkin, the Cool Whip, the sugar-free pudding, the almond milk, and the stevia, about a total of 17, and a total per serving about $1.41. And I can't remember what number. I'd have to do the math backwards, figure out what it was that I used. But I would say, like I said, at least 12, maybe 15 servings of this. Again, about a half cup would be the serving size. So if we compare the superfood pumpkin pudding to the My Plate, it's not going to fit perfectly, but it's not a meal, it's a snack. It's not going to, of course, pumpkin is a starchy vegetable, and it is one that it's got the fiber in it, but it's very low fat, but there are some carbohydrates. So it's not going to fit perfectly on this My Plate because it's not a meal, it's that snack in between. But pumpkin is considered a superfood. So I don't know if you've ever read about superfoods, and there's a a group of them, a list of them. I'm not sure how long it goes, but I know things like blueberries and spinach and kale and pumpkin and I think even pumpkin seeds, and I can't remember, like maybe almonds. I can't remember all of them, but there's a group of foods they consider superfoods because of the nutrients that they have in them. So I found this as an explanation of kind of why we would call pumpkin a superfood. It says, could that pumpkin pie be actually good for you minus the refined sugar? Then yeah, it is. It's an excellent idea to eat plenty of pumpkin throughout the year. It happens to be one of the most nutritionally valuable foods known to man. It's inexpensive, high in fiber, and low in calories. And you can see down below the health benefits and the nutrients that are in it. And that's why they call it a superfood. And the sidekicks or things like it are the butternut squash, carrots, orange bell peppers, and sweet potatoes. Again, all with pumpkin, because of the carbohydrate and that's content there, you want to limit it, but that's what we're doing when we're watching the serving size. You are paying attention to serving, you're limiting it, you're not overdoing it. And if you're better than me, you're eating it throughout the year, like they suggested, instead of piling it all in, here in October and November. That's when I start thinking about things that taste or have the pumpkin flavor, and I start looking for them and craving them in some sense. So try to, add that to your diet throughout the year, not just and in the fall like I do. But it's a superfood. So again, I always tell everybody, when they're telling me, well, that's a lot of carbohydrates. It's like, well, this is a better choice with the pumpkin than a Snickers bar is. And I'm not talking bad about Snickers bar or any candy bar. I'm just saying it's got a lot more nutrients to it than what a candy bar is going to have for you. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a snack, and this would hit the spot. It would keep you maybe from eating the sugar or the pumpkin pie that actually has the refined sugar in it. Then it's a better choice or a healthier choice. If at Thanksgiving, you have an option between some other pie and pumpkin, keep in mind that pumpkin in itself is a superfood. So you're going to get some benefit from it. But if you can make your own pumpkin pudding and take it to your Thanksgiving get-togethers, then you're even going to have a healthier choice. So I don't know. Can we agree, I guess, is my question. There are actual low carb affordable options when we're comparing them to eating out. Some recipes don't take any special spices or ingredients. I mean, I don't think that the green beans, turkey sausage, or the chili was anything too overly difficult. However, I will agree the minestrone soup took a lot more time and had a lot more ingredients. They're not special ingredients. They're just vegetables. But I can tell you that soup is so good that if you like vegetable type soup with that Italian flavor to it a little bit, it's just a little different. Then if you like that at all, you're really going to like that recipe. Some of the recipes don't take much time at all, especially once you get all the ingredients there and you put it into a crock pot and you turn it on and you leave for a while and run your errands or go to work and come home and it's all made for you and ready to eat. Compared to waiting in a drive-through or at a restaurant, sometimes the time it takes to prepare meals at home, especially when you have the leftovers, because if you think about the time spent making it, then later on you won't have to spend time because you will have leftovers and you'll have that extra time to do the things you enjoy doing if it's not cooking. So it can't be a whole lot different than the time you spent going to a restaurant, either waiting in line or waiting at the restaurant for your meals to arrive. It's healthier to make the meals yourself compared to even a TV dinner. And I know there are some probably healthy frozen dinners out there, but most of the time they load up on the starches to fill that up to make you feel like you're full, where some of these I'm trying to load up more on the vegetables than on the starches. All right, so there are some questions up here in the chat, so I'm gonna look at those. I just wanted to bring the November 21st presentation to your mind because it is a little earlier, I think, than what we normally have it because of Thanksgiving and how the month falls. So it will be the 21st during the 12 o'clock time, and it's about surviving the holidays. With all the food that's out there, with the choices that are going to be in front of you, what can you do to help manage your diabetes when all of these choices are in front of you? Let me see if someone. Oh, okay. That's a good point. Most of these items on the recipes that I included are found at food pantry. So I didn't even think about that. So yeah, thanks, Jana, for pointing that out. Oh, it looks like it looks like the comments in the messages were Haley sending the videos where we just kind of put all of those together. So as I made the different recipes, putting the pictures together so you can see the steps that I took to get there. So, all right. Well, if there are no other questions, this was just one more time of going on a shopping trip and getting serious about managing diabetes and not using that it's too expensive, that it's too time consuming, that it's just too hard or too difficult to cook for yourself and to eat healthy. I think if we're going to truly get serious about this, we really got to look at it objectively, and we have to admit if it's not even better as far as cost, carbs, and time, then it can't be worse. It has to either be equal or even better. I would vote and say probably better with all that I've seen as I've made these recipes and my experiences at restaurants and drive-throughs. So, but you can make your own decision. I'm going to encourage you to try one of these recipes and see if you like it, and see if you don't mind maybe, cooking more at home and having those leftovers there for you to save time later and have those enjoyable, healthy meals that meet the My Plate guidelines so that you get those healthy, balanced meals every day. All right, well, we'll close for today. If you have any questions, you can always get back with us anytime here at Valley Professionals. And if I don't hear from you guys before, then I'll see you on the 21st.